Chapter 5. Persistent, Present Determinism. Pillar 4. 5.1. The time is now, and it always will be. With the problem of infinite regress behind us, we now turn to a hidden assumption that still shapes our view of reality, the belief in time beyond the now. Every moment we experience happens now. The only reality we ever encounter is the present moment, a persistent present that continually renews itself. The persistent present principle in existential logicism holds that the present is all that truly exists, rejecting the common belief that time is like a flowing line with a real past behind us and a real future ahead. In this view, past and future are only ideas or conceptual constructs, and only the present is ontologically real. Philosophically, this aligns with presentism, the idea that only present things exist. Past events have happened and are gone, and future events will happen but do not exist yet. By fully embracing the ontology of the present, we can resolve paradoxes of time, reframe causality, and clarify the role of consciousness in perceiving time. Why insist that only the present exists? This conclusion arises from several fundamental insights. Nothingness never existed. There was never a state of absolute nothingness from which something had to arise. Existence in some form is eternal and ongoing, always present in one way or another. No infinite past, an infinite regress of prior events is impossible. If an endless chain had to occur before now, the present moment would never arrive. The fact that now has arrived means the chain of causes must terminate in a sustaining reality of the present. Each moment is finite. The universe may be unbounded in the way the number line is infinite, but any given number on that line is finite. Likewise, any given state of the universe is finite, bounded in content and present. There is no heap of past states out there, and no cabinet of future ones. Only the current state exists, changing. Even in the case of an expanding universe, there would still be a limit to the amount of content that could exist within that space at any given moment. A universe with truly nothing in it would not simply be empty. It would meet the definition of non-existence itself. That makes absolute nothingness incoherent. There must therefore be at least one fundamental ground floor unit of reality, the smallest stable quantity that prevents existence from collapsing into nothing. For our universe, there is both a ground floor and a ceiling, a lower bound that guarantees something rather than nothing, and an upper bound beyond which no further content or energy can be packed. Within those boundaries, change can be unbounded, but every present state remains finite. Simply put, there has to be a minimum stable state of the universe, or it would simply collapse into the greater cosmos and be indistinguishable. Experience is immediate, all experience, and thus all knowledge occurs now. We have direct access only to the present moment. The past and future reach us only through memory and anticipation, and those are present processes. Time is not. Fundamental, and in fact all of reality is relative, not just the time dimension Albert Einstein overlaid on reality. In line with our resolution state interface, RSI, model, physics can be formulated without treating time as a fundamental dimension. Time appears only as the measured rate at which the present state changes. In other words, the universe runs without a universal external clock. The present does not need permission from an outside time to exist. Causality unfolds in the now. Every cause produces its effect in some present moment. The chain of cause and effect is contained within successive present moments, not spread across a pre-existing timeline. In short, the present is not just one moment among others. It is the only actual state of reality. Past and future have no independent existence of their own. They exist only as present traces and present expectations. Existence is nothing other than the self-renewing field of the present moment. 5.2. The illusion of past and future. One of the biggest misconceptions about time is the idea that the past still exists in some form or place, or that the future is somehow already real, just waiting to happen. Intuitively, we tend to picture time as a continuum along which past, present, and future all have some kind of existence. Many people, in science and in everyday thought, even encourage this picture by treating time as a dimension, akin to space, leading to the notion of a four-dimensional block universe picture where all moments coexist. If one takes that image literally, time would not really flow. The universe could be seen as a static 4D spacetime, a frozen block in which every event, past or future, simply is. In that case, the past and future would be just as real as the present, and our sense of a moving now would indeed be a kind of trick of consciousness. Existential logicism takes the opposite stance. The real illusion is the belief that past and future exist in addition to the present. In reality, the past has ceased to exist, and the future has not yet come into existence. They are not places we could travel to or realms that are already there waiting for us. They are simply labels for states that once existed or may exist someday. All that is real, all that truly exists, is what is happening right now in the present. What we call the past is essentially a set of present memories and records, and the future is a set of present expectations or projections. You will never find the past by digging through the universe, nor locate the future in some hidden dimension, because they simply are not real entities. They are ideas, dependent on mind to recall or imagine them. Over 1500 years ago, Saint Augustine of Hippo ND, recognized this. The time present of things past is memory. The time present of things present is direct experience. The time present of things future is expectation. In other words, the past and future exist for us only as present traces, present memories, records, or present anticipations, never as independent realities. The only actuality is now. 5.3 Memory, history, and records. If only the present exists, how do we explain our very real sense that the past did happen? Don't our memories and all the historical evidence prove the past's reality? They prove that the past was real, not that it is real now. Memory is a present phenomenon. The brain in the present is storing and recalling information about former states of the world. But this no more proves that the past still exists than a photograph proves the continued existence of its subject. A photo of a city 100 years ago doesn't mean the city of 100 years past still objectively exists somewhere. It means light once reflected off that city and left an imprint that we can examine today. Likewise, your memory of yesterday is a pattern of neural connections and activations in your brain right now. It is a present state of your neurons that carries information about a prior state. The events of yesterday themselves are gone, only a record remains, whether in brain cells, in diaries, or in physical traces like fossils. Those records are all part of the current world. They are present objects or states with particular configurations due to past influences, but none of them is the past itself. To mistake a memory for the actual past is like mistaking a history book for the events it describes. The book is real now. The events are not. The events happened, and their effects persist, but the events are no longer occurring. As St. Augustine noted, we essentially carry the past within the present as memory, not as an ongoing reality somewhere else. And remember that memory is notoriously imperfect. It's not a literal re-experiencing of the past, but a reconstruction. This underscores that the past we recall is a present construction, which can be distorted or even false. It has no independent existence where it could be directly checked. We infer the past's nature only from present clues and records. Similarly, historical records, documents, photographs, videos are present-day artifacts. A video of last year's event is not the event itself playing in some hidden time. It's a sequence of images stored on a medium that we can replay now. All evidence of history lives in the present and must be interpreted by present minds. Thus, nothing about the existence of memories or records contradicts the persistent present view. On the contrary, it highlights that everything we know about the past is rooted in the present. There's an interesting irony here. We often think the past is solid and the future unknowable, yet in truth, we have no direct access to either. We only have present knowledge, records, memories, traces, and present reasoning, extrapolations, predictions. Past and future are, in a strict sense, ideas and inferences that we form in the present. If only the present exists, then what do we mean by time itself? Essentially, time is the rate at which the present changes. We use coordinates and clocks to measure that rate, but those are just tools, markings on a gauge. Labeling an axis T for bookkeeping doesn't turn past and future into actual places. Writing time as a dimension in equations is a convenient way to calculate sequences of events, not proof that those events all coexist. The block universe picture idea, which comes from interpreting certain physics equations literally, is essentially a way to redescribe change as a static 4D structure. It's a perspective that treats all of history as laid out, but notice what it sacrifices. It erases the active causal unfolding that we directly observe, where present causes lead to present effects. It's a neat mathematical trick, but a questionable ontological claim. Let's examine this physics-based argument about time more closely and see why it's not as conclusive as it sounds. 5.4% relativity and the block universe picture. Modern relativistic physics is often taken to support the idea that all of time is equally real. In relativity theory, time is treated as a dimension, much like the dimensions of space. This leads to the image of a four-dimensional block universe picture, in which the entire history of the universe, past, present, and future, is laid out like a tapestry. Albert Einstein, 1920, reinforced this interpretation when he wrote that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. If we take the space-time picture literally, time doesn't really flow. The universe just is, with every event eternally embedded in the continuum. Our perception of a moving now, under this view, would be akin to an illusion, created by consciousness sliding along the temporal axis. The empirical result is narrow and powerful. It denies a single global now and an absolute clock. It does not deny that reality is always given as a now. The persistent present perspective offers a counter-narrative. We argue that relativity, properly understood, does not force the conclusion that the past and future are just as real as the present. What relativity shows is that there is no single universal present moment that everyone agrees on, a result of the relativity of simultaneity. There's no absolute clock marking the time for the cosmos. But this undercuts the idea of a global now, not the existence of a now. Each observer still experiences a present, they just won't all agree on which distant events are happening at the same time. In other words, relativity might deny us an objective, God's eye view of a single universal now, but it doesn't deny the reality of each observer's now. We can interpret spacetime as a kind of coordinate map that different observers use differently, rather than as a literal block that exists all at once. For each observer, reality unfolds as a sequence of present moments, and relativity simply tells us that those sequences can be sliced up differently depending on motion and gravity. Some thinkers have suggested ways to accommodate a flowing present in relativity. For instance, one idea is an observer-dependent present, where now is real but specific to each frame of reference. Another, more speculative, idea is that there might be a hidden preferred frame or absolute time beneath relativity's equations, even if we can't directly detect it. We don't need to endorse any particular speculation here. The point is that relativity's empirical success does not oblige us to declare the present an illusion. Nothing observed in experiments forces us to conclude that past and future are actual entities akin to different regions of space. All observations can be explained by local present events influencing each other via signals. The block universe picture, then, is a philosophical interpretation layered on top of physics, not a discovery of physics. It's a way of talking about the equations, not a physically observed entity. We should be careful not to confuse the model with reality. Drawing time as an extra axis on a graph is a useful abstraction, but it doesn't prove that past and future are literally out there alongside the present. On the contrary, the persistent present approach takes seriously something the block universe picture leaves out: the reality of becoming, the ongoing coming into being of events. The block model, by design, has no flow and no genuine causation, since in a true block all events are equally there in the 4D structure. It asks us to dismiss our full impression that time flows and that effects follow causes, calling it an illusion. But doing so raises its own mystery. If time is an illusion, why does every fiber of our experience insist that it's happening? Why do we remember the past, but not the future? Explaining away such fundamental aspects of experience can be a costly move, arguably one that denies a chunk of experienced reality. Good science should aim to explain our experiences, not explain them away. It's notable that debate on this issue is alive even within the scientific community. In 2016, for example, a conference on time in cosmology highlighted a sharp divide. Some participants defended the block universe picture as simply how things are, while others, including prominent physicists, argued vehemently that becoming is real, and that, as one attendee bluntly put it, the future does not exist. Ontologically, it's not there. Physicist Lee Smolin 2013, is one who maintains that time's flow is a fundamental aspect of reality, and that the block view misses something crucial about how the universe evolves. We cite these perspectives not to settle the matter by authority, but to show that the persistent present view is a defensible interpretation, even in physics, albeit a minority one. And it has a strong card to play. It directly embraces the reality of causation and change, rather than hiding it in a tenseless geometry. What about the classic science fiction notion of time travel? Some solutions of general relativity, like certain wormhole geometries or so-called closed time, like curves, appear to allow, at least on paper, for loops in time. However, even if such exotic solutions exist, they don't imply that the past is a wide-open territory we could freely visit. Stephen Hawking, and Lodno 2010, for instance, doubted that true time travel is physically possible and conjectured a chronology protection, essentially, that the laws of physics prevent paradoxes from occurring. In other words, nature might enforce the persistent present by making it impossible to actually visit a bygone era. Even if a closed time-like curve could form, it would be a bizarre, self-contained loop, not a free ticket to wander a living past. So far, no evidence has shown that we can break the one-way flow of time or access anything but the present moment. 5.5. Eliminating time paradoxes. A pragmatic strength of the present-only worldview is how neatly it resolves the famous paradoxes of time travel. Take the infamous grandfather paradox. If a time traveler could somehow go back and prevent his own grandfather from having children, he would prevent his own birth. So how could he have existed to go back in the first place? In a present-centric universe, such a scenario cannot occur because there is no actual back in time to travel to. The would-be time traveler has nowhere to go. The past isn't an existent place or timeline. To even imagine true time travel, we have to smuggle in the assumption of eternalism, the idea that past moments are like locations one could visit. Remove that assumption, and the paradox evaporates. One cannot alter the past if the past isn't a thing that exists. The only way one could travel in time would be to reconstruct a past state now, in the present, for example, arranging the world today into the exact configuration it had 1 year ago. But even if someone achieved that, it wouldn't truly be going back to that past. it would be creating a present imitation of a past state. And crucially, this recreation would still take place after the original events, preserving the overall causal order. In practical terms, you could set up a scenario that looks like the year 1900 and even interact with what appears to be your long-dead grandfather. But this would be neither your actual past nor your actual grandfather, just a facsimile created in the present. In short, you cannot rewind the universe. You can only create a new state that resembles an earlier state. All those science fiction time paradoxes disappear under this view. You can't accidentally erase your own existence in 1900 because you will never literally find yourself in the year 1900. You remain always part of the chain of events moving forward. 5.6 Determinism versus predestination. The persistent present viewpoint also clarifies the distinction between determinism and the idea of a predestined future. In a block universe scenario, if the laws of physics are deterministic, then your future is in some sense already there, which can feel unsettling. Do we truly have any choice if everything is pre-written? Under the persistent present model, even if the world is deterministic, the future is not something that exists now or already in any form. It will be determined only when it happens, when it becomes present. The information that will make up the next state of the world cannot exist until that state actually arrives. This nuance is important. The universe isn't like a movie film with all the frames already shot and waiting to be played. It's more like a live computation that's constantly evolving. Even if an outcome can be predicted in principle, it isn't real until it materializes. In other words, knowing what will happen is not the same as saying it exists now. We can define persistent present determinism, PPD, as determinism without pre-written outcomes. Only the present exists. Each present state, under lawful dynamics, yields the next present state, but there is no warehouse of future states sitting ready. Determined is not the same as already written. It means every effect has sufficient causes. It doesn't mean the effect exists before those causes bring it about. This understanding allows us to have a determined yet open future. Open not in the sense that just anything could happen, but in the sense that the future isn't fixed until it comes into being. In a determined system, if one somehow had perfect knowledge of all initial conditions and the laws of nature, one could calculate what will happen next. Even if one could somehow calculate the next state with perfect information, that outcome still isn't already there. It must unfold through the causal process. Moreover, no subsystem within the universe, no observer or computer inside the system can guarantee a 100% accurate prediction of the next state ahead of time. There are both practical and fundamental limits. Any would-be predictor is part of the universe and would have to predict its own behavior as well, an impossible self-reference problem, and it can never have instantaneous knowledge of every factor in play. Interactions often can't be resolved until they play out in the present. Think of quantum processes, or even something as simple as a coin toss. You don't know the result until it lands. These constraints ensure that from our perspective, the future retains a degree of uncertainty until it becomes the present. In short, determinism means the future follows from the present in a rule-bound way, but it does not mean the future exists already. We still have to live through each moment to see what happens, and in living through it, we, along with all other forces of nature, are deciding what that future will be. 5.7 Implications for free will and consciousness. This perspective on time has significant implications for the age-old problem of free will. Free will is often thought of as the ability to have done otherwise, to genuinely choose among multiple possible futures. However, if only the present exists, there aren't multiple futures out there to choose from. There is only one reality unfolding, the one that actually happens. In other words, the classic garden of forking paths image, where each decision splits the universe into different possible timelines, does not reflect reality, aside from speculative multiverse ideas which we can set aside here. In the everyday single universe sense, at any decision point, you do not have a set of parallel futures that are all real and waiting. You have one future that will become real, and which one it is depends on what you do now. Thus, if by free will someone means a magical ability to step outside of physical causality and pick from a menu of genuinely open, already real possibilities, then such free will cannot exist in a present-only, causally closed universe. We cannot step into a future that isn't yet, or hop back into a past that is no more. When we deliberate and make a choice, we are not selecting from multiple actual futures. We are performing a process in the present that will influence the single future that comes to pass. Importantly, though, this does not rob us of meaningful agency. Our will and our choices are very real parts of how the future gets shaped. We do deliberate, imagine alternatives, weigh options, and those mental processes are happening right now in our brains. They are part of the present state of the world, and thus part of the cause of the next state. Choosing doesn't mean consulting an array of already real outcomes. It means using the information and desires we have now to affect what we do next. To deny the reality of choice just because outcomes are determined would be self-defeating. It would ignore the fact that the experience of deliberation is itself an influential event. Any complete understanding of reality must include the fact that we experience making decisions. The persistent present view fully acknowledges this. Yes, you experience yourself choosing. And that experience, the process of deliberation, is happening in the present moment and playing a causal role in what you do. What this view denies is that you could have actually chosen otherwise in exactly the same situation. If we somehow rewound the universe to precisely its previous state, every particle and every thought in your brain the same, then when we let it move forward again, you would make the same choice, because nothing relevant had changed. If something truly random intervened, the outcome might differ, but that randomness wouldn't be under your control, and thus wouldn't count as your choice either. In that strict sense of, I could have done otherwise, we don't have free will. That kind of absolute, indeterminate freedom is illusory. However, we can still preserve a more sensible notion of free will. You have free will if your decisions are your decisions, if they originate from your own internal deliberations, motivations, and character, as opposed to being coerced by external forces. And in that very real sense, we do have free will. My choices are free when they are the product of me, my mind, my preferences, my reasoning, doing what it does, without external compulsion. The laws of physics and the state of the world at that moment may make my action inevitable, but it is inevitable because of me, because of who I am and how I decide, not because some external destiny imposed it. Seen in this way, we don't need a literally open future or metaphysical indeterminacy to have meaningful agency. We make choices. Those choices have reasons and causes, and those choices affect what happens next. In reality, only one path unfolds, and our will is one of the forces shaping it. This view doesn't diminish the importance of our inner lives. On the contrary, it highlights it. Our deliberations and decisions are exactly how the universe's deterministic, or probabilistic, laws play out through us. The future isn't fixed until it becomes present, and our thinking and deciding, in concert with everything else going on, help determine what that future is. We are not mere spectators to fate. We are active participants in the unfolding of events. Our intentions and efforts right now will be reflected in the world as the next moment arrives. 5.8 Consciousness in the now. Our exploration of time would be incomplete without considering consciousness, because consciousness itself is inextricably tied to the present. We never actually experience the past or the future directly. We experience only the now. What we call memories are experiences happening now, the present act of recalling past events. What we call anticipation, or planning for the future, is also happening now, present thoughts and feelings about possibilities. Psychologists sometimes talk about the specious present, the brief span, perhaps a few seconds, that the mind treats as the present moment. Our brains integrate a little bit of what just happened with a little bit of what might be about to happen, to construct a smooth sense of now. But that window is constantly sliding forward. As new sensory inputs arrive and recent ones fade, in effect, our consciousness is like an ever-updating screen that displays the latest frame of reality, with a few afterimages lingering and a few predictions layered on. At any given instant, then, what you consider your conscious self, is a pattern of neural activity and awareness occurring in the present. Your sense of personal continuity comes from memory, but you only ever think, feel, and experience in the present. This yields a powerful insight. The only reality you truly know is the present reality. Everything else, the distant past, the distant future, even the idea that time flows at all, is something you know indirectly, through the lens of the present. This doesn't prove that only the present exists, but it aligns nicely with that idea. If we needed evidence for a fully real past or future, we'd be hard-pressed to find it, since all evidence we ever have is here now. Positing that the past somehow still exists, or the future already exists, is an extra metaphysical assumption for which we have no direct proof. It's more straightforward to say the universe is exactly what it seems to be, an unfolding process that is always happening now. From an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense that consciousness evolved to be intensely present-focused. An organism that isn't attuned to the now won't survive long enough to worry about yesterday or tomorrow. Our minds do carry the past and future with them, but only in the form of present information, memories, and present motivations, goals, fears, hopes that guide current action. In short, consciousness is a phenomenon rooted in the present moment. It's the mind's way of being aware of the organism's state and surroundings in real time, integrating a bit of what just happened and a bit of what might happen next into one living moment. This fact about consciousness dovetails with the persistent present view. It suggests that now is not just one time among others for a conscious being, it is the only time the being actually lives in. 5.9 Science and the present. If we accept that only the present exists, we may need to rethink how we talk about time in science. One immediate shift is to see time not as a fundamental substance of the universe, but as an emergent concept or a derived measure. In physics, what we really observe is change, processes, motions, interactions. Clocks tick because something is moving or oscillating. If nothing at all changed in the universe, the concept of time would have no practical meaning. From this perspective, the flow of time is just another way of saying the universe keeps changing Some physicists have indeed proposed ideas along these lines. Julian Barber 1999, for example, argues that time is an illusion, and that all we have are different possible configurations of the universe. He calls them nows. He suggests that what we perceive as time is simply the relationship between successive configurations, essentially, the order in which those configurations are experienced. In Julian Barber's picture, one could imagine every possible state of the universe existing in a time-less collection, and the appearance of motion or flow coming from the fact that these states can be arranged in sequence. Our view takes a different emphasis. We aren't saying all those nows exist. We say only one now is real, the one that is happening, and it keeps updating. But we agree that time is not a fundamental ingredient of reality. It's an emergent way of talking about change. If only the present is real, then statements like time is a fourth dimension of space are metaphorical at best. What's really going on is that things in space are changing, and the parameter we call time is a way of quantifying the rate or sequence of those changes. This way of thinking also casts new light on the arrow of time, the distinction between past and future. Physics identifies an arrow of time primarily through entropy. Entropy, disorder, tends to increase, meaning systems naturally progress from order to disorder. That's why we have irreversible processes and a clear direction to events. Eggs break and scramble, but don't spontaneously reassemble. This arrow is fully compatible with a present-centric universe. It doesn't require the past to be stored somewhere or the future to be pre-written. It only requires that certain processes leave cumulative results as they go. High entropy means the present contains many records, or scars, of what has happened, while low entropy in the distant past meant fewer such records. We can have a one-way dynamic without having the past on file or the future in storage. Records accumulate in the present. Because physical processes favor their accumulation, we have no records of the future, because those processes have not yet occurred. Notably, some modern physical theories can be formulated without treating time as fundamental. In our own resolution, state interface, RSI, approach, for instance, we can compute a system's evolution without positing a master time variable in the background. Instead, time emerges as a kind of counter or measure of change as the system's state updates. The present state leads to the next present state, and so on, without the need for an external time axis. This suggests that treating the present as the only reality isn't at odds with doing physics. It might even align with how the universe fundamentally operates. 5.10, no cosmic eraser, no cosmic library. A present-only worldview naturally invites some common questions. Where does the past go when it's gone? If it's no longer real, is it somehow erased? And where is the future before it happens? Is there some cosmic archive or master plan? Such questions treat time as if it was space. They imagine that the past is a place we've left, and perhaps could visit, and that the future is another place that already exists ahead of us. The answer from the persistent present perspective is straightforward. The past isn't somewhere, once a moment has passed, it has no further existence. It doesn't need to be erased or moved, it simply isn't, except insofar as it has left effects in the present. Similarly, the future isn't a place waiting for us. It will be, and only be, when the universe actually arrives at it. Think of our analogy of an improvisational performance or conversation. Once a line is delivered, it doesn't linger as a solid reality. It remains only as an echo or a memory, or perhaps a recording. And the next line isn't sitting in a script somewhere. It gets created in the moment of delivery. The universe is like that, a continuous improvisation. Once a moment has played out, it exists only in its effects on what comes after. The upcoming moment isn't available to experience until it is spoken into existence. There's something poignant about this realization. Each moment of our lives is unique and fleeting. It emerges. It is all there is while it's here, and then it slips away, surviving only as memory or influence. Far from being depressing, this truth can be liberating and focusing. It echoes the wisdom of many spiritual traditions. Since reality is always now, we should give the present our full attention. This is where life actually occurs, not in replaying what has vanished or pre-living what hasn't yet come. It also underlines that history is not destiny. The past does not hold us captive, because it isn't an active entity at all. It's done. What matters are its effects, knowledge gained, conditions created, and what we choose to do in the present. Likewise, the future isn't a pre-written fate in some cosmic library. It depends on the actions and events of the current moment. Instead of picturing time as a line with all moments laid out, a better metaphor is a moving spotlight of reality. The spotlight shines only on the present moment. It continuously moves forward, or rather it continuously illuminates new moments as they come into being. But it never lights up more than one moment at a time. The moment just past goes dark. As soon as the spotlight moves on, it ceases to exist, even though its effects persist as part of the conditions for what's next, and the future moments lie in darkness, in non-existence, until the spotlight arrives to illuminate them. Crucially, this spotlight isn't sliding over a pre-drawn timeline. It's actively creating the timeline as it moves. Our conscious experience of time's flow is simply us riding along with this spotlight of reality, always at the point of illumination, the now, never ahead of it and never behind. 5.1%, the power of now. Embracing the persistent present worldview has profound effects on how we understand reality and our place in it. It simplifies our picture of existence. We no longer have to imagine mysterious extra realms of time filled with already gone past events, or already real future events. There are no hidden time domains where lost moments linger or future moments lie in wait. There is just what is, renewing itself moment by moment. This simpler ontology naturally removes the possibility of time travel paradoxes and other confusions, since there are no alternate time places to cause trouble. And it resonates with our subjective life. We find ourselves always in the now, which fits with how reality fundamentally is. This view is also philosophically empowering. Reality is always with us, right here and now. The past is unchangeable precisely because it no longer exists. The future is unwritten because it does not yet exist. What is real is this moment, and it's from this moment that the next one will spring. That understanding invites us to focus on what we can actually influence, the present. The persistent present framework is not only logically consistent and scientifically plausible, as we've seen, it fits with known science and avoids internal contradictions, but it's also meaningful on a human level. It reminds us that we are participants in an ongoing creation. We are not prisoners of a fixed timeline. We are shapers of a developing story. By letting go of the notion that the future is already out there or the past is somehow still back there, we place responsibility where it belongs, on what we do with the present. This perspective can even alleviate certain existential anxieties. Need not fear that we are puppets dancing on strings pulled from the future, nor that we are forever haunted by a past that somehow still exists. The present is where everything happens, including healing the effects of the past and building the conditions for the future. It's an active, dynamic process, not a static tapestry. In the persistent present, being and becoming are one and the same. To be real is to be present. To become is simply the manner in which the present continually transforms itself. Existence is not a line we traverse or a film reel we're trapped inside. It's an ever-present act of creation. Only the present exists. That is the essence of the persistent present principle, enough for logic, enough for ethics, and, as RSI shows, enough for physics. With that in hand, the next chapter can speak plainly about will and value, because both live where reality lives, in the present. 5.12 Formal Derivation, PPD, Persistent Present Determinism. This appendix states the logical core of the persistent present pillar. The thesis of persistent present determinism, PPD, is twofold. 1. Ontologically, there is always exactly one present configuration of reality that obtains. Past and future do not exist as co-equal regions of reality. They exist only as structures, records, memories, models within the present. 2. Dynamically, the present is deterministically linked to other possible presents. Given a complete description of the present and the laws that govern it, there is a unique actual continuation. Apparent branching and probabilities describe our epistemic situation and our models, not multiple simultaneously actual futures. PPD thus rejects both. 1. A block universe picture in which all times are equally real, and 2. A metaphysics of fundamental, lawless randomness. It sits on the same methodological ground as the rest of existential logicism. We only assume what cannot be denied without falling into contradiction or explanatory collapse. 1. States, occurrences, and the present. We build on the generic notion of occurrence already used in ERP and ION. Definition 5.1. Occurrence. Let R denote reality in the broadest sense. We use a unary predicate, OCC, X with the intended reading, OCC, X, which means X is an occurrence, some item, event, or state of reality that actually obtains. No assumptions are made here about consciousness or observation. An occurrence is anything that must be there for reality to count as non-empty at all. We now group occurrences at a given moment into a structured whole. Definition 5.2. Present state. A present state is a structured collection, S of occurrences such that 1. Every occurrence that actually obtains is real now, is included in S2. S is maximal. Nothing outside S also obtains now. We write SS, for S is a present state. Intuitively, S captures all that is the case at a given present. The PPD thesis is that at any time, there is exactly one such S that obtains. Everything else, past and future, real. ETs appear only as content inside some S, for example, as records, predictions, simulations. Definition 5.3. Present state realizing reality. A PPD reality is a structure whose ontology at any given time is exhausted by one present state S. WPBD, IFSS, SX, OCC, XXS. Here, WPBD is a schematic label, indicating that we are working in a reality that instantiates the PBD picture at that stage. Everything that exists now is in S, and nothing else exists now. This does not yet say how S changes. It only pins down that the real, at any point, is a single finite configuration, not a spread of equally real pasts and futures. 2. Past and future as present structures. The persistent present chapter argued informally that past and future do not have the same ontological status as the present. They are only ever encountered as present structures, memories, records, models, expectations. We can express this in the same token occurrence language used for ERP and TRIPS prison. Definition 5.4. Past, future representation. A temporal representation is an occurrence R that encodes a claim about a non-present time. Formally, at R is an occurrence with OCC. R, the content of R. Written content R is a proposition about the past or the future. For example, there was a supernova. There will be a solar eclipse. We write rep past R or rep future R when content R is about a past or future time, respectively. Lemma 5.1, past and future, are only presently given. In any PBD reality, every epistemically accessible fact about the past or future is realized as a present occurrence. Formally, whenever an agent now takes some proposition phi as a fact about past or future, there is a present record R in the unique present state ses, whose content is pH. Let takes as fact now, A, phi, abbreviate agent, and now takes phi as a fact about past or future, then, WPBD, a phi takes as fact now, A, phi, R, OCC, RRS content, R, equal to pH. Here S is the unique present state from definition 5.3. Proof sketch. If an agent now treats phi as a fact about a past or future time, there must be some present cognitive or physical structure, realizing that stance, a memory trace, written record, stored model, or neural activation. That structure is an occurrence R, contained in the present state S. Thus, all talk about other times is, as far as actual ontology is concerned, talk about present occurrences that carry temporal content. There is no need, and under PPD no room, to duplicate reality into separately existing past and future regions. This lemma captures the TRIPS prison aspect for time. Our entire epistemic situation with respect to other times is mediated by the present configuration. There is no view from outside the present from which past and future can be inspected as coexisting objects. 3. Finiteness and completeness of the present. PPD also assumes that each present state is finitely and completely configured. Infinity is allowed as an open-ended concept, no upper bound on how many states there could be over all time, but not as an actually realized infinite stack within a single present. Definition 5.5. Finite present state. A present state S is finite if the set of distinct, independent degrees of freedom realized in S is finite. Intuitively, S can be fully specified by a finite amount of information, even if we may never actually write that specification down. We do not need to fix what counts as a degree of freedom, spatial cell, logical bit, field mode, etc. The requirement is structural, lemma 5.2 mo actually infinite present. In an existential logicism acceptable reality, no present state S is actually infinite in the sense of containing a completed independent infinity of distinct realized degrees of freedom. Proof sketch. If a present state S had an actually realized infinity of independent degrees of freedom, then any complete description of S would require an actually infinite specification. But any attempt to refer to the entire present from within that reality would necessarily be mediated by finite structures, finite brains, finite devices, finite formulas. The idea of an actually completed infinite configuration goes beyond what can be even in principle represented or fixed by any structure inside reality. And in the existential logicism framework, such bigger than any possible witness structures are treated as conceptual ideals, like the concept of arbitrarily large number, not as single completed actualities. This parallels the ion move against treating absolute nothingness as a completed state. Infinite present is likewise relegated to a pseudo-state when interpreted as completed distinct actuality. Remark 5.6. Completeness of the present. By calling S a present state, in definition 5.2, we are already building in that S is complete. Nothing that is, in fact, the case now is missing from S. There are no further currently undetermined facts about the present waiting to be settled. All genuine openness is about future configurations relative to S, not about S itself being partially undefined. 4. Laws and the deterministic update of the present. To talk about determinism, we need a minimal notion of a law-like link between present states. Definition 5.7. Law of evolution. A law of evolution is a rule F assigning to idealized present states possible successor states. Formally, let S be the class of admissible present states. Then, FS-PS, where Fs is the possibly singleton set of states compatible with the laws given that S is the present. This accommodates stochastic or underspecified laws at first. Fs may contain more than one candidate successor. PPD is the thesis that, at the level of actual reality, there is in fact only one realized successor. Definition 5.8. Deterministic update. A law F supports deterministic update in a reality If, for the actual present states S, there is a unique state S such that Sef S and SS is the next present state, we then write SE equal to next, S with next, sactual A, single-valued successor function on the actually realized chain of presence. Lemma 5.3. No unresolved branching. Suppose reality satisfies. 1. Present-only ontology. Definition 5.3. 2. Completeness of the present. Remark 5.6 that S contains two distinct candidates. No further fact about reality ever resolves one or S2 becomes actual. Proof sketch. Assume for contradiction that such an S exists. Then relative to S, there are two genuinely distinct complete ways reality could proceed. S1 and S2, with no difference in S that privileges one over the other. If no further fact ever resolves which one occurs, we face two options. 1. Both S1 and S2 are taken as equally real successors of S. This violates present-only ontology, since there would then be more than one complete configuration simultaneously real after S2. Neither is ever definitely realized. Then the supposed future of S is not a definite state at all. The openness never resolves into a specific present. But by completeness of the present, at any time there must be some maximal state C that captures how things in fact are. A permanently unresolved branching is exactly a future that never becomes present, that is a non-event. That contradicts the assumption that reality actually continues. Thus, genuine, permanent branching from a fixed and complete present is not admissible in a PPD reality. Any apparent branching must either be A. a modeling artifact, our ignorance of which S is in fact selected, or B. reducible to differences within S that already fix S. The upshot is that, given present-only ontology and completeness, genuine, unresolved 50/50th splits cannot remain hanging forever. One definite successor present must obtain. 5. Persistent present determinism. We can now state PPD as a structural property of reality. Theorem 5.4. Persistent present determinism. In any existential logicism acceptable reality satisfying 1. ERP and ion, so that existence is inescapable and occurrences are unavoidable. 2. Present-only ontology. Definition 5.3. 3. Completeness and finiteness of the present. Lemma 5.2 and Remark 5.6, and the law-like constraint of definition 5.7 together, with the rejection of unresolved branching. Lemma 5.3. Reality has the structure of persistent present determinism. There exists a, possibly unbounded, sequence of present states, S0, S1, S2, such that at each time there is exactly one present Sn that exhausts what exists then. There is a single-valued successor function next with Sn plus 1 equal to nextin for all n in the domain of the sequence. Any other possible state, at the level of our models, other elements of F, Sn, are non-actual. They represent counterfactuals or epistemic possibilities, not additional co-realized futures. Proof sketch. By ion and ERP, reality cannot fail to contain occurrences, and any denial of occurrence presupposes occurrence. By present-only ontology, at any stage those occurrences are grouped into a unique present state Sn. By completeness, tin is fully definite. By finiteness, it is a well-formed configuration, not an actually completed infinite stack. Given a law F as in definition 5.7, Lemma 5.3 rules out permanent unresolved branching. Therefore there must, at each step, be a unique realized successor Sn plus 1. This yields a single-valued update map next along the actually realized chain. Other members of Fsn are not co-realized successors, but unrealized alternatives definable only within models or theories. Iterating next gives the persistent sequence of presents claimed. Thus, given the existential logicism constraints, reality can only take the form of a single, lawfully updated present, whose configuration is always finite and complete. The flow of time is nothing over and above the unfolding of this deterministic sequence of present states. 6. Free will, probability, and the perspective of agents. PPD does not deny the lived reality of choice or the usefulness of probabilistic description, it relocates them. Remark 5.9. Compatibilist free will, under PPD. Within a present state Sn, agents deliberate, imagine alternatives, and eventually act. From the inside, it is meaningful to say I could have done otherwise in the sense that there are nearby counterfactual states, sen in which the agent's internal configuration was different, and led to a different next, sen PPD, insists only that, at the level of actuality, exactly one of these configurations is realized at a time. Freedom is thus reinterpreted as the agent's causal role within the deterministic unfolding, not as an ability to break the chain. Remark 5.10. Probabilities as epistemic structures. When we say an outcome has probability 1/2, we are not positing a reality that remains forever 50/50ths. We are expressing our partial information about which definite successor, Sn plus 1, will be realized, given our coarse-grained description of Sn. Under PPD, the world never stays in an unresolved superposition forever. Each present is concrete and definite. Probabilities live in our models and credences, not as fundamental ontic splits into many equally real futures. 7. Relation to other pillars. PPD is not an isolated doctrine. It locks into the rest of existential logicism. ARP guarantees that, from within any present, the attempt to deny that anything is happening self-destructs. PPD adds that what is happening is always given as a single present configuration. Anion removes absolute nothingness as a competitor to being. PPD then adds structure. Being comes only in finite, present slices, not as a timeless block or as a sequence that can be permanently suspended in unresolved possibilities. Lair, logical elimination of infinite regress, requires that explanatory chains terminate in self-grounding structure rather than in brute, endless regress. PPD provides the temporal side of this. No actually infinite regress of unfinished moment-to-moment indeterminacy is allowed. Taken together, these pillars yield the picture of reality that PPD was designed to express, a universe that is always somewhere concrete, never nowhere, always in a specific finite configuration, never an actually completed infinity, and always unfolding along a single, law-constrained line of present states, rather than exploding into countless co-realized branches. Chapter 6. The spectrum of consciousness.